Magnetism and Electricity, Video 3, Investigation 2, Making Connections. Hey, it's Nick Kapoor from the Winship School again, continuing the video series for the FOSS Magnetism and Electricity unit. The focus of this video is going to be on Unit Investigation 2, Making Connections, which is broken into 4 parts, and according to the teacher's guide, should take you 4 teaching sessions of 30 to 60 minutes each. These are the student learning outcomes for the investigation. And again, you can see them at the Science Department Weebly site. In this investigation, you're moving from magnetism to electricity. In part 1, lighting a bulb, students try to create a circuit to make a light bulb light up. This is a lesson that you're going to need to set aside time to prepare for. You're going to have to cut enough wires for the whole class, as well as strip the ends so that the metal can make contact and allow the energy to flow. I also like to get gallon-sized plastic bags and place enough materials in each bag for a group. This way, when it's time to distribute materials, you can either walk around and give each group a bag and let them get started, or call kids over to pick up one bag of materials instead of having to count out a specific number of wires, bulbs, batteries, etc. Much like the beginning of the magnetism unit, when they have to predict which objects will stick to a magnet, I like to have kids make a prediction of how they think they'll get a light bulb to light, and then give them the rest of the class to try to make it work. For this investigation, I like to have them work in partners, and I give them 1 light bulb, 1 battery, and 3 wires. I purposefully give them more wires than they need, so that they have to make choices about what materials to use, and not just assume that they're going to need everything that I give them. I start giving clues for groups that are really struggling. I say things like, the energy needs to come out of the flat side of the battery. Then I might say, the energy needs to go back into the bump positive side of the battery. And I might say something like, the energy needs to go through the light bulb. I challenge students who can light the bulb with 2 wires to try and light it with 1 wire. For ELL and SPED population vocabulary support, you can find my picture chart up on the Science Notebooks Google Drive to help them with the vocabulary for this part of the unit. In part 2, students are introduced to closed and open circuits and the idea of schematic diagrams. If you haven't done so already, you'll need to add materials to your bags like a switch, a motor, a bulb holder, a circuit base, etc. I often go through a couple of pictures and have students explain to me why it's either a drawing or a schematic diagram. Another good tip that I give students is to start by making a rectangle and then adding the symbols for the components directly onto the lines. Students may need an extra day of practicing making schematic diagrams, and I've included a schematic diagram practice packet in the Google Drive folder. Also a schematic diagram game or practice PowerPoint activity. In part 3, students test insulators and conductors. I use a picture like this to help students understand that for the purposes of 4th grade science, a conductor allows the energy to flow through, and the insulator stops the energy. If you look at page 24 of Investigation 2, you'll see a picture of a student going on a conductor hunt. It looks silly, but I found that kids like to wear that weird circuit-based necklace thing and look for conductors that way. Again, you can use the same picture chart as the magnetism test objects for this lesson. One thing I like to do is make a checklist on the board of all the materials that each group should have in their materials bag. This way they can check at the beginning of their work time to make sure that they have everything they're supposed to, as well as the end to make sure they didn't lose anything. I want to mention that after part 3 of this investigation, one of the suggested reading lessons is Making Static, for which the BPS science teachers have developed a close read lesson. This lesson is a completely developed lesson posted on the Science Weebly site, and you can download it by going to the Science Weebly, then clicking on Science and Literacy, and then scroll down to Close Reading Resources, and then scrolling down to find the lesson for your unit. So we would be doing FOSS, Magnetism and Electricity, Making Static. In part 4 of this investigation, students use what they know about insulators and conductors to determine which brass fasteners are connected by a hidden wire. The mystery circuits are often made for you in the science kit of materials, but you need to check to make sure. If they're not already made by a previous user, you'll need to prep the circuit boards by following the direction on page 27 and 28 of Investigation 2's teacher guide. There's no new vocabulary for this lesson, and if you're finding yourself facing a time crunch when planning your unit, this lesson might be skipped or used as extension activity for students who might finish other investigations with time to spare. That's it for Investigation 2, Making Connections. In the next video, we'll cover Investigation 3, Advanced Connections.